Hello everybody, my name is Gabrielle Ray and I present cases of missing persons, the unidentified, and unsolved homicides. Today I'll be presenting the unsolved homicide of Ruby Carr, who was deceased on September 5th, 1983 in Peru, Indiana. She was 74 years old at her time of death, and I've seen some discrepancies in her date of birth. I've seen she was born on March 29th, 1909, or April 29th, 1909. And she was nicknamed Mama Carr. She was born in Tennessee to parents Bennett and Fannie Williams, and she got married in DeKalb, Tennessee to Cordell Carr in 1954. She had 8 children, and she was described as very neat and a good cook. She had never said anything unkind to anybody or made anybody upset intentionally. And unfortunately, her husband Cordell was killed in a construction accident in Kokomo. On September 5th, 1983, one of her sons tried to call her, to no avail, and he kept getting a busy signal. He called the operator, who said the phone was off the hook, and Imelda Wallace, who is Dell's sister, and Dell is a child of Ruby, went to check on her and found her dead in her bedroom. Her body was found inside of her residence at 10 East Adams Street, and her cause of death was blunt force trauma and stabbing. Items were found missing from her property as well, and it happened Labor Day weekend in what was then called Bloomfield, a suburb of Peru. Dell and Bill Pierce found out about her death after returning from vacation. Dell and Bill were married for over 28 years, and Bill was Ruby's son-in-law. And when Dell got a call from her sister, she screamed so loud that Bill could hear her while he was out in the back digging potatoes. "She always treated me as a son," said Bill. Police said that the murder happened between 10 p.m. on September 4th or 6 a.m. on September 5th. And it was one of the most brutal homicides that they have ever seen. Bill believes the way that the police handled the situation was botched, but quote-unquote, they tried. He believes that items listed were mishandled, and the first officer there did not secure the scene properly. "You'd have thought it was a carnival," he said. People from the neighborhood were running through the yard, and potential evidence was destroyed. And people were possibly picking up the murder weapon, which police claimed was never found. The phone was used before dusting for prints, and the police only took 10 pictures of the crime scene. Blood spatter was still all over the walls when the family and friends were let in the house. Strange calls and letters ended up coming in after the murder, and everything was turned over to police. And police said that more than 300 people were questioned originally. The Pierces talked to neighbors and took more than 100 photos from various angles of the murder scene and property surrounding the home. Did they put as much effort on a poor little widow lady as much as they do on a prosecuting attorney? Asked Bill. Police ruled out burglary as a motive, but there was a $55 Social Security check that she'd cashed the day prior missing, which they believe that was the alleged motive of the crime. And one suspect bragged about the specific amount of money that matched the amount taken. Police told family that it was typical of someone who had been incarcerated before or spent time in reform school. Duke's Memorial Hospital still has the breastplate that shows the stab wounds. The family hired a forensic pathologist to examine the breastplate and autopsy reports for $200. The pathologist said that the breastplate was mishandled and material that it was preserved with distorted the wounds, and unfortunately no private investigator would take on their case. It has also been stated that there was a lack of cooperation between law enforcement, and the city, county, and state police didn't talk to each other as much as they should have. Bill takes solace in the Bible, Cain and Abel especially. The only way it'll ever be solved is if someone confesses. Somewhere, somehow, more than one person knows something, and conscience will cause them to come forward, says Dell. Bill, an ex-military officer, realizes that he can also kill. Anybody can. He used to see no fault in anyone and believed that everyone could be rehabilitated, but now, after this, he believes in the death penalty. It still hurts, says Bill. If solved, it may make me feel better, but it won't bring her back. She wouldn't want to be back because she's in heaven, says Dell. Sometimes you just want to talk to her, says Bill. Bill and Dell put deadbolts on their door after the murder, and they hate to be alone at home. Ruby's picture is hung in their hallway near their bedroom so they could see her at night and every morning. Police did the best they can to keep up with the family and provide them with information. They always were kind and tried hard to answer all of our questions, and they let us know the facts, says Bill. Most original investigators retired or transferred to other posts, and her home is now demolished. The only remnants of her lie in the hearts and memories of her family and friends. She was a blessing, says Dell. She is buried at Mount Hope Cemetery in Peru, Indiana, and her spouse, Cordell Carr, is also buried with her. A reward for any arrest or conviction in this case was bumped up from $5,000 to $10,000, and law enforcement says that they'd be glad to pay it if anybody has any information. That is all the information I could find on the death of Ruby Carr. She seemed like a sweet old woman who did not deserve this brutal attack, and I'm sure her family or friends, the community, and myself, we just want to know why it happened. And like law enforcement and the family says, somebody somewhere knows something. She did not just do this by herself. And I'm sure she didn't hire somebody to do it to her. Somebody did this to her, and they brutally beat her with blunt force trauma and stabbed her, a 74-year-old woman. It's not fair. She lived her whole life only to be taken out by some punk and some scumbag that, doesn't have any respect for human life. It makes me absolutely sick to my stomach. But one thing about this case is I really, really want to know a little bit more about what the calls were that were coming into the home after the murder happened. What were the calls saying? Was it prank calls about the murder, or was it people with false information trying to hurt the family intentionally? I'm sure that the police know more than we do, but I feel it'll be helpful to know a little bit of the information that was said on the telephone to the family, because maybe somebody would know the voice, or somebody would, come forward in any way, shape, or form. I just really want this case to be solved. It's one of my pet cases, and I've thought about this case for a very long time. And half of her family members, I haven't been able to get a hold of any of them. I don't know who they are, because the only people that were really interviewed in the media was Bill and Dell. And I'm sure they don't have Facebook or Instagram or any YouTube channels or emails where I could get a hold of them. And if they did, I'm not sure how to get a hold of them. But unfortunately, this case has not been solved in decades. And it's been decades of hurt and heartbreak for this family. And they don't deserve that. And one more thing about this case is, why wasn't the suspect who was bragging about the $55 security check looked at a little bit more? I know there might not have been much evidence against him, like physical evidence, DNA, etc., but technology has been improving in the DNA field, so maybe one day they could test any samples that came from the house, if any, because like Bill said, this was a bit of a botched crime scene. So maybe one day a suspect could be named based on any kind of things left behind at the crime scene. The one question that just keeps running through my head is, who would do this to such a sweet old lady? If anybody has any information on this case, please do not hesitate to contact the Indiana State Police Department, District Investigative Command. Their address is 1451 North Eel River Cemetery Road in Peru, Indiana. Her case number is 61-0692, and their phone number is 765-473-6666. Now, if anybody has any information on this case, please do not hesitate to come forward. It has been so long that this family has no closure, and I'm sure that, her grandchildren or her kin, anybody related to her who has heard about this case is probably searching and probably can't find much information because it's so old and because there's really no media articles. And I know somebody somewhere knows something, and it's about time that they come forward, and a break in this case is very well needed. If you have any information, no matter how big or how small the lead may be, it's very important, and it may be just what we need to crack the case. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful night.